Hi, welcome to CVG's review of Dead Space 3. I'm Tim Weaver. I'm here with Matthew Pallett, the guy who's written our review. Matt, hello again. You already said hello, so hello twice. People may have already nipped to the end of this review and they may have been slightly surprised by the score. You're here to tell us why it's got 74.
Well, the score is probably the most surprising thing out of 16 hours of Dead Space 3 because, tell you what, it ain't a horror game anymore. And I was massively, massively disappointed by that. You know what, as a pure all-out action game, it ticks the right boxes. But as a Dead Space game and, you know, weighing up the expectations for what that brand means, it doesn't do the job. They just don't care about horror anymore.
So do you think that you're feeling the disappointment more because I know what a massive, massive fan you were of the first game in particular. Mm-hmm. The second game you loved, but not quite as much. Yeah,
I mean, the second game sort of split people. I really still liked it. I was, you know, a little bit concerned by it moving away from survival horror, but that didn't take away from the fact that it was still a really good, enjoyable game. I don't know, this time around, I just feel like they've dropped the ball. It feels like a game made by people who don't really get what people loved about the first Dead Space, and a game that its only focus is action, 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 epic moments, epic moments. Unfortunately, the epic moments aren't anywhere near as epic as they were in Dead Space 2. And the action, I don't know, it just feels a bit clumsy, to be honest. There's no restraint in the game whatsoever. And the things about Dead Space that made it so special, I mean, the weapons were great. You were using tools, not guns, and that you'd have to strategically dismember necromorphs. You're actually seeing some of it here on screen right now in one of the only isolated moments which feels a bit like the original. But I don't know, like the developers have said in the run-up to the release, like, well, people only play with the plasma cutter, so they missed out on all the other weapons, and that was wrong. And I'd argue that actually, no, that was really good. It proves that you were onto a good thing.
Yeah. Don't
force them to change. Don't say, look, you have to make your own weapons because we're going to throw a million things at you at once and they're all going to run at you really fast. That's not why people played Dead Space. They played it for the atmosphere. They played it because it was different, and I don't know, I feel Dead Space 3 is just being sucked into the big homogenisation of all action games that you know, we're seeing happen on a month-by-month basis. And it's a real shame. I mean, for someone who does want a horror game, you know, Dead Space was one of the few games that still gave us that. You know, Resi's moved away from horror. Silent Hill, well, that hasn't been decent since Shattered Memories, you know, on the Wii. And they've just got all the beats wrong. It's not scary. It's not even. There are no attempts for it to be scary. They just hurl necromorphs after you, at you in a big group, and they all run at you, so you can't even step back and pick them apart. And just little things like you'd fight some dogs, and they'll have tentacles. It's a replacement of the old baby with 3 tentacles from Dead Space 1 and 2. From Dead Space 2, sorry, they couldn't really fit them into Dead Space 3, so they replaced them directly with dogs. So you fight your first dogs, and then you find a file saying, "Oh, the dogs in the paddocks are getting restless. What's going on?" Now, hang on. Surely, if you're making a horror game, you put that file first, and you make people think, "Oh God, what am I going to face?" And then a few rooms later, then you unleash the new beast on them. It's all done backwards. And unfortunately, there are examples of that in every single chapter. Just things not being handled right.
So you think, is it? I mean, in the first game, you used the plasma cutter in a very sort of, well, strategic dismemberment was the actual name of it, so and it still is. But you don't. I mean, they throw so many weapons at you. I mean, why do you think it's just a conscious decision from them to make this more shooty?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they've said as much in interviews. They've said to me in the past at preview stages and stuff. I think it's a real shame. I mean, Horror 101, one of the big things that makes a horror game scary is the idea of resource management. Like, you know, what do you take? What do you leave behind? I've only got so many spaces that I can carry stuff in. I've really got to micromanage, make sure I can survive until the next save point. Now, it's just one type of ammo, fits all weapons. Doesn't matter whether you're firing rockets, whether you're firing, you know, Ripper blades. It's all just one type of ammo. So just stock up on loads of ammo, get the biggest weapons you can, and just go nuts like Jesse Ventura in Predator, unfortunately. And that's a real shame because Dead Space was better than that.
Yeah.
And now it's not.
Okay, so people, given your strong feelings on that, people may be wondering, okay, but it's still got a 7. So tell us why it's still got a 74 and not a 50 or a 40.
Because it's still a really good action game. You know, there are a lot of action games, and this is more polished than almost all of them, perhaps with the exception of the odd Gears or Uncharted or something. You know, it's very well made. There's a lot to it. There are some nice set pieces. I think overall they don't match up to Dead Space 2's. There's a lot of stuff for co-op. It's a bit of a swindle if you are playing it single player focused, because there are areas that are blocked off to you unless you're playing in co-op. There are 10 optional missions through the game, 3 of them are co-op only. So you can't quite see everything in single player, which I think was claimed in the run-up. That's not quite true. You can see most of it though.
We should probably point out at this point that when you were reviewing it, at the time of recording this, we haven't had the opportunity to play co-op because of a...
No, we're handling that separately in the review because it wasn't up and running in co-op. We played co-op in previous stage before, and it works fine. I think a lot of the combat it leans towards co-op play, but again, that's even more actiony. That's even less atmosphere. You know, taking it away from what Dead Space was. You know, it gets your adrenaline pumping, and it's a decent game. It's just for a lot of people, when they look on the box, they see that Dead Space name, they expect something from that game.
Yeah.
And for those people, Dead Space isn't going to deliver, unfortunately, what you're after.